A few days ago, I was on the phone with the homie 𝙲𝚘𝚙𝚅 talking about the recent chapters. We often get together every few weeks creating theories and speculations on what could happen in the future of the series. But this time, Jay mentioned something about a theory he heard that Bakugo may have one for all. And I immediately denounced that possibility because frankly, it's just not true. But Jay told me that even if I didn't believe it to be true, I should still make a video on the possibility that Bakugo may have one for all. And that may have been the single moment that changed my thoughts forever. I wanted to get this right, the most accurate depiction of this theory. So I picked up every manga that talked about the one for all quirk, I rewatched the entire My Hero Academia Heroes Rising movie, and I read through all the My Hero Academia wikis regarding one for all and how quirks work. And that led me down a rabbit hole where I would need to read more chapters and make more connections than ever. And my conclusion is that Bakugo has one for all. Now let me show you why. It all started 434 days ago. Bakugo and a few heroes were in battle against the world's most dangerous villain. After gaining a quirk awakening in his earlier fight with All for Shigaraki, Bakugo has been training his quirk with maximum efficiency to take down this villain. But Deku was supposed to be with him. The plan was simple. As the heroes separate the villains, a small group of heroes led by Deku and Bakugo would face off against the world's most dangerous villain, Shigaraki, and the UA Flying Coffin. But after a crazy turn of events, Deku ended up hundreds of miles away from the heroes and everything was left to Bakugo. But Bakugo was completely outmatched, and the raw strength of 100% Shigaraki was enough to take his life. The other pro heroes couldn't believe they allowed a student to die and wanted to do whatever it takes to bring him back to life. Pro hero 𝙲𝚘𝚙𝚅, using his quirk photo body, gave his life and his body an attempt to literally become Bakugo's heart, but Bakugo never woke up, and Shigaraki proceeded to annihilate every other hero in the UA coffin. And ever since then, Bakugo has been dead while Deku has been fighting Shigaraki, trying to protect the world. About 5 minutes before Bakugo's death, but on the other side of Japan, the mentor of Shigaraki, All for One, was in a fight with the #1 hero, Endeavor. All for One came up with a plan to merge together with Shigaraki to take control over his original quirk, but using Shigaraki's body. So he got away from Endeavor and flew towards the UA Flying Coffin. And on his way, All Might, the only man ever to beat him, was trying to stop him. And because of the sheer hatred All for One has for All Might, he decided to play along and dispose of All Might while on his way to UA. So the epic fight of Mech All Might and full quirk All for One began, with All for One eventually taking advantage of the limitation of All Might's hero suit. He managed to cripple All Might and planned to torture him in front of his pupil as he arrives to Shigaraki. So All for One dragged All Might to the battlefield with Deku and Shigaraki, and it's evident that All Might is on the verge of death. Some hero tried to help All Might, but All for One stopped him. Fighter jets attacks All for One, and he easily does away with them. And Deku can't save All Might because he's holding off the world's most dangerous villain. Everyone is frightened, and there's no hope for All Might, as All for One lifts All Might over his head and begins ripping him in half. But then a beam of light flashes from the UA coffin with a silhouette emerging from it. It's great explosion murder god Dynamite awakening from his death, but now with a new power. A power that is eerily similar to One for All. And with this new power, Bakugo flew to Deku in a blink of an eye. Deku then catches and catapults him using gear shift to increase Bakugo's already high speed, allowing him to save All Might from his initial death. But now, Bakugo has to fight All for One. There are 3 key points that led me to believe that Bakugo currently has one for all. When Bakugo initially gained this new ability, right before Shigaraki pierced his heart, he was able to do something only Deku could do. I was reading all the parts in My Hero Academia that talks about different things within the One for All quirk, and I came across chapter 304 where Deku was talking to the One for All vestiges and learning why he must be the last One for All user. But before they explained that to Deku, the first One for All user, Yoichi, said something very interesting. He said that all the knowledge and information that All Might has gained about the One for All quirk has been passed to all the other vestiges via his spirit form, which led them all down a rabbit hole on how All Might's spirit form exists in the first place. Because Yoichi remembered what All for One said when they infiltrated One for All in the Paranova Liberation War. All for One said that quirk factors carry pieces of consciousness of a person. So because each user of One for All has a quirk factor, what is contained in One for All is their quirk factor and fragments of their consciousness. But All Might should not be an exception. yet he is. All Might is the only vestige who actually imbued a true piece of his consciousness into the quirk, meaning he is the only one whose raw spirit is manifested in One for All. So when you see All Might's spirit form, you're actually seeing All Might's conscience. And that leads me to the first point on why Bakugo must have One for All. When Bakugo initially gained this new ability, right before Shigaraki pierced his heart, he was able to do something only Deku could do. He was able to see the conscience of All Might. And because he's able to see All Might's conscience, that is a hint that the presence of One for All is residing within Bakugo. And this leads me to point number 2. Bakugo's new power is not a quirk awakening, and 𝙗𝚘 actually proves it. 𝙗𝚘 was born with a fire quirk with greater potential than Endeavor, but he was also born with the biological structure fit for an ice user. And this reality affected his relationship with his father, as Endeavor wanted to create children strong enough to surpass All Might. In his secret training when he was young, 𝙗𝚘 learned that his quirk is connected to his emotion, where the more emotional he became, the more powerful his quirk got, and eventually awakened his quirk from emitting red flames to blue ones. But unfortunately, 𝙗𝚘 brought himself near death due to losing control over his emotions, and was saved by none other than All for One. He then grew to hate his father and his family for the neglect and the lack of love that he was given. All of that anger grew over the next 10 years, and 𝙗𝚘's sole desire was to kill Endeavor, even at the expense of his own life. And after surviving a fight with Shoto, he met with Endeavor with the plan of blowing himself up using Shoto's phosphor technique. In the midst of Endeavor's encounter with 𝙗𝚘, Endeavor accepted his fate of dying by the hand of his oldest son. And when he reached out to touch 𝙗𝚘, he felt something unusual. 𝙗𝚘 developed an ice quirk. Endeavor did explain something important, saying sometimes a near-death experience can trigger a quirk awakening. But this is different, because on the other hand, people can also summon absurd powers in a crisis when it's a do or die situation. This type of power only manifests as the Reaper draws near. The point of emphasis is that Endeavor is acknowledging the difference between a quirk awakening and whatever is beyond a quirk awakening, by showing us that Bakugo already had his quirk awakening, but also that there is another stage of evolution that happens to people when about to die. Bakugo so far fits the description of manifesting absurd powers in a do-or-die situation, something beyond a quirk awakening. But there's a secret that Endeavor didn't know about that is the real reason 𝙗𝚘 manifested an ice quirk, and I believe it's the real reason for Bakugo's power-up as well. Earlier in the same chapter with 𝙗𝚘's ice quirk manifesting, 𝙗𝚘 was having a conversation with Mr. Compress in a prison. He mentioned to Mr. Compress that he was a Himura, making him kin to Rei Todoroki, and that the Himura clan's blood is thick. They have always had extremely promising ice powers, and throughout the generations, each quirk became more complex, becoming deeper and richer than before. And some powers lie dormant within a user unbeknownst to them, and 𝙗𝚘 is one such user, where the DNA of the Himura clan was so strong and complex that it manifested itself in 𝙗𝚘 unbeknownst to him. This is not a quirk awakening. This is a quirk summoning. The difference is the nature of 𝙗𝚘's quirk summoning is in his mother's DNA. So the only thing that Bakugo is missing would be strong DNA. In My Hero Academia Heroes Rising, Deku and Bakugo were unable to defeat Nine with their powers alone. So Deku came up with a plan to give Bakugo One for All so that they can have the power to defeat Nine with two 100% One for All users. Now, in order for One for All to be transferred from one person to another, two things must occur. The person receiving One for All must intake DNA from the current user, and the will of the current user must be to transfer the quirk. So when Deku gave One for All to Bakugo, he was passing on the legacy of One for All to Bakugo forever. But after the defeat of Nine, something happened. The One for All quirk miraculously transferred back to Deku, but it wasn't transferred using DNA. which completely goes against how the One For All quirk works. Now I can't logically explain how it went back to Deku, but what I can explain is what this would mean for Bakugo. When All Might gave Deku One For All, he was still able to use the quirk for one main reason. The embers in One For All temporarily stayed with All Might after he gave up One For All to Deku, and it temporarily stayed with Deku after he gave One For All to Bakugo. But because Bakugo never gave One For All back to Deku, the embers within One For All are still manifested within Bakugo. So he still has the DNA of One For All inside of him. And just as Endeavor touching Dabi's chest was proof that he has summoned a new quirk, All Might's vestige meeting with Bakugo is proof that One For All is summoned within Bakugo.